Hello everybody, this is Chris and this is Barnone 11970, and as always I thank you for taking the time to listen what I have to say, and this one's going to be an interesting one. Now, I have been making videos pretty much off and on since 2010. Those who've been following me for a while know I had another channel, Barnone 11967, but it didn't start out the way I am now. As a matter of fact, when I first started that channel out, I was just doing like cartoon kind of stuff and it wasn't working. I started watching people making videos about their coin collection, and I happened between 2006 till up to that point was collecting coins. So I just made a video or two about my coins, not knowing there was any manipulation in the coins of the government or all the things that I know now. And I've come across a lot of different types of people in my several years of making these kind of videos. Some people are very friendly. Some people are suspicious. Some people are full of hate and negativity. And every now and then there are people who like to drop what I like to call the information bomb. Now, before I knew any of this stuff or had a clue about it, I mean, I was the typical sheep. I cared about video games. I cared about what was on MSNBC. I had no clue about any of this stuff until one day I don't know if they were caring or whatever, but a person on YouTube decided to contact me, and I was back then a lot more trusting, basically dropped decades worth of knowledge on me in one 3-hour phone call. And I won't mention their name, I'll just use the initial J. So I don't know if they still listen or contact with me at all. I haven't heard from them in a long time. But it definitely changed my path. Now, whether I was guided or pushed, I don't know, because ultimately in the end, it's all free will. I could have dismissed it or ignored it or dismissed it altogether. But it opened my eyes. Now, back then, it was a lot harder because you don't know what's true. You don't know what's misinformation. You start believing things. You become paranoid. It changes your life. But I'm very grateful about it, and it's geared me towards where and who I am now. So regardless of how it started and what their true intent was, I brought it to my own particular level in life. So I went where I wanted to go, even if I was pushed in a direction. I don't know. So I got a message, a comment from a person, and I'm going to leave them anonymous out of respect. If they want to make themselves publicly known, they're more than welcome to. Now, I've come across people that have been genuinely honest, and I've had people that flat out lie, and some that pretend to be your friends. So, I mean, the truth tends to be the truth, and liars tend to expose themselves. So I don't know this individual or individuals, so I can't say what they say is real or honest, but what they sent me was at the very least quite interesting, and I want to share this with you all. What their intent is, I have no idea. The person claims to be an elitist, which why somebody in the world of eliteness would want to talk to basically a nobody like me, that's for them to decide, but I can't discredit or credit. But I want to make this publicly known for people so you could see it's not some agenda or anything like that. I'm just relaying information to those who care. So let me show you this email this gentleman, well, assuming it's a gentleman, but sent to me. And it's just things that are, again, hidden in plain sight. And, well, let me show you and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so here we go. Let me read this email that they sent me. And of course, like I said, I'm going to keep the person anonymous. They wrote to me, regarding, quote-unquote, supermarket, the shoppers are the marks, and we're super, i.e. better and above, as in supervisor. Now, like I said, this person says that they are an elite person. Now, again, I don't know. But that is a very interesting way to start out and think about when it comes to supermarket. It's them being super, elite, and us being the mark. You ever see somebody, when somebody's trying to scam somebody and they're trying to find a victim in the crowd, they say, oh, there's my mark. So interesting there. Visor, let's continue. Visor is another word for hat. So the supervisor is the Pope. Now, if you've watched my videos before, you've known, and if you haven't, please watch more, that I've said on several occasions that the Vatican and the Pope is what's really in charge of this planet. He's basically, the Pope stands for the voice of God, basically saying, until God comes back and says, I got this, he's second in command. That's their thought process behind this. Whether you believe in that or not does not change what is. But if you also, when you talk about, well, why does a hat have to do with the Pope? Well, if you ever saw the Pope's hat, a lot of times you see it only from the front. If you were to look at it from the side, you'll notice something that it's basically symbolizes. If you ever Google the Babylonian god Gilgamesh, it's an ancient fish god, and the priests would wear hats where they would look like a fish with a mouth wide open. So if you look at the Pope's hat and see it from the side, it will show the very hat that they show that the Babylonian priests would worship, and that is Gilgamesh. So that does make sense to me. So let's continue. The money given in supermarkets goes to the Pope and eventually reaches the elite group. Must be nice. Supermarkets have aisles, i.e., you're married to it. Well, when you get married, don't you walk down an aisle? I like that. The produce section. We want you, they call it produce, but it's actually also pronounced produce. We want you to produce to make more debt slaves. I like that. This one I find the best. Checkout lines. When you're at a supermarket, what do? You go to the checkout line. What's another word for checkout? It means to die. Time to check out. So I wonder if people are starting to see a coincidence here or something more to it, which I've said so many times, hidden in plain sight, where things are right there in front of you. And time after time, you're seeing just more and more quote-unquote coincidence. So the haters and the non-believers and the trolls are going to say it's just paranoia or anything, but for those of you who could see the pattern, you could see that regardless of who this person is, what they wrote makes sense. So let's continue. Shopping carts look like metal cages. We're conditioning your children for debt prison. Kind of interesting because the children are in the seats of those shopping carts. Excuse me. Some coupons have a cash equivalent on them. I've always wondered about that. Like they'll say like something like 1/100th of a cent. Well, he writes, supermarkets could not declare this to be unless there was collusion with the central banks. Therefore, there is much more fiat than disclosed by the governments. Yeah, that one I would not argue with one bit. I don't disagree at all. Supermarkets sell addictive things. Sugar, soda, liquors, cigarettes, condoms/sex, etc. Don't forget things like aspartame and genetically modified foods. They sure do. Supermarkets have marketing and products appealing to all ages and genders. Some of the first supermarkets were founded by bankers. Interesting. I wonder if anybody wants to look that up and verify that to be true, but I find that interesting and not very surprising. Supermarkets were the first establishments to brag about having parking lots. In other words, deforestation and promotion of the auto industry and pollution were started on a large scale by supermarkets. That's very true. I mean, you see a supermarket, you see large pieces of land taken away and cemented over, killing whatever forest is around it. So, yeah, that in shopping malls. Let's continue. These are just a few things relating to supermarkets. Of course, we have all sorts of chemicals in the food and water, which I've talked about numerous, as well as nanoprobes. Interesting. Also, when you enter a supermarket, there is a slight pause as the doors slide open. This is set up to carry out a retinal scan. Interesting. The largest data collectors in the world are supermarkets. Another quote-unquote hidden in plain sight is keyboards. The elite group has conditioned billions of people to know that Control-Alternate-Delete means reset. That is what we do. We control the alternative media, delete what we don't want, and we will get a reset. Well, if you know anything about resets, we all know it always starts and ends with gold and silver, so that's a good way to protect yourself. But probably one of the reasons why my kind of information doesn't get out there, because they do control the alternative media. I mean, you look at people like Alex Jones. I know there are, especially if you're newer, because I used to listen to Alex Jones like everybody else in the beginning, but then you start to learn that that person, their agenda is not what you think it is. And I've always made this expression that if you have 99 pounds of ice cream and mix in 1 pound of dog poop, what do you have? Well, you have 100%, you have 100 pounds of poop, because it doesn't matter that there was more ice cream than poop. Once you mix that in, you're probably not going to want to eat it. So, in other words, a little bit of bad can taint a lot of good when it comes to that kind of situation, aka Alex Jones and a lot of others. I've had people claim that I was one of those people, but I don't understand that. I have no agenda. I'm not sitting here 3 or 4 years later. I'm not sitting here in a mansion, riding around in my yacht or my limos, having private helicopters. I mean, I'm just struggling just as much as I did in the beginning. I am just here as a normal person that's very sad that there are people who feel superior just because they have paper currency. It is disappointing when I see things like this, but it's appreciative, because whoever this person is, whatever their motive was, if anything, this brought things to light. Now, is that guiding me in a certain direction? Is that, like I say, how you want to have a maze that you have somebody free will walk through, but you push them down a certain way? Like, I've never thought about these things before. Now it's in my consciousness. What will that bring? Now, for one thing I could say is it doesn't bring me fear, because the one thing I will always remind people of, fear equals control. So it doesn't matter what somebody presents to you. It's how you take it and how you shape it is what makes it into something or turns it into nothing. It's like listening to a radio station. Just because the person on the radio is saying things you don't like, even if it's directly at you for some strange reason, you don't have to accept it. So I thank the person for taking the time to write this. They didn't have to. Whether this person is who they say they are, I have no way of proving that. And to me, it doesn't really matter, because only the person that does what they do knows their true intention. I mean, that's why, for me, I don't worry about what the trolls and haters do and say about me, because I know my true intention. Let people claim what they want. I'm just a regular person that one day had somebody care enough to drop info bombs on me enough to where I felt that it was my job to help others. Because if somebody took the time to do that for me, I thought it was nice to do it for someone else. The only problem was the person that talked to me had years of experience and knew what they were talking about. I didn't know anything back then. And it took a while, a few years, before I started to comprehend it. That doesn't mean I know everything. I'm far from it. But if I'm gaining the attention of even any individual, whether they're elitist or not, means I'm doing something right. So where this goes, I mean, I have no control over that. All I know is I appreciate information that makes me look at things in a different perspective. So what the intent is, that's on the person who wrote this. But as far as the information, take it as you will. If you think this is something that helps you to understand better, then that's a beautiful thing. If it's something you think is going to give you more reason to fear, then be careful. Because remember, fear is always a choice. When you're born, you could be placed in an empty pool filled with snakes, tarantulas, spiders. Well, that's a tarantula is a form of spider, but all different types of spiders, bears, lions, and whatever, and you'd probably want to pet them. You would not be conditioned to be afraid of them. You're taught fear. And that's why there's so many things hidden in plain sight, to where you just walk on by, you don't think about it. And because they sound crazy, you just automatically dismiss them, or don't pay attention to them, or fight against it. Truth is truth whether you believe in it or not. So are these things truthful? I don't know. I can't prove it, but they sound interesting. That's the way to go. And a lot of these things do make sense. I mean, they do sell addictive things. And checkout is another word for dying. Produce, well, they want you to produce. Supermarkets have aisles. They are called aisles. And where do you walk down when you get married? You walk down an aisle. That's why I've always talked about things like death and how you are a corpse, legally speaking. That's why when you rise in the morning, well, only you rise from the dead, and you do it in the morning, where you also can mourn at a funeral, and you wake up. Well, where else can you go to a wake? These are not just coincidence, even if you want to make them out to be that way. And I've talked so much about how it has to do with admiralty law in the sea. That's why when you think about a bank, well, where else can you find a bank? You could find a bank on a side of a riverbed. Well, what does a river do? The river flows to the sea. That's why you hear things like cash flow. And another name for flow is current. So flow to the sea or current to the sea, current sea. It's all in the words. If you want to think it's coincidence all the time and you see things like this over and over again, well, you're just one of the people that they're laughing about. And I'm sure they're laughing about me trying to make the attempts. I mean, basically, when you know what's going on, it's a lot easier. But basically, the way I think of life is, think of the answers to life as a puzzle. And when you're born, nobody tells you that this puzzle exists. And what they do is they take this humongous puzzle, chop it into billions of pieces, and scatter it all around the earth. And then what they do is they take everybody else's puzzle pieces and they throw them all mixed in together. So not only do you not know there's a puzzle that exists, once you find out that there is even a potential of a puzzle, then you have to go searching for it, and then you have to go through all the different stages and try and put all the puzzle pieces together until you formulate some kind of opinion and a picture. So as much as I know, like Socrates said, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. Something to that extent. So, again, take from this what you will, but don't live in fear. Because even if there is a reset, if you know how to protect yourself, you will always be better off. And evil will never win outright. There has to be balance. Now, the scale can tip to one side or the other at times, and it's obviously a lot better to be an elite groupist at this point because they're unified. They're together. They coordinate. They work together, while we all fight with each other, get distracted by every single thing, get bribes, get paid basically debt notes to continue their agenda. Divide and conquer works incredibly well. So, I find this stuff entertaining. I find it enlightening. It helps me to see things on a bigger perspective. It makes me appreciate more and more that I am on the right track. Now, the thing about walking down a path, sometimes you can slip and fall. Sometimes you can go in the wrong direction and get lost in the woods. But you can always find your way. Just trust yourself. So, thank you for listening to this. I know I like to ramble sometimes. Some people like it, some people don't. I'm not here for those who don't. If you've watched all this time, let me know what you think about this stuff. And the person who sent it to me, regardless of your motives or who you really are, because I can't prove either one, I thank you for at least choosing me to show this stuff. So, thanks again. I appreciate you watching. Leave your comments, hit subscribe, hit the like button. Just don't hit other people. Love them, because that's what it's all about. Love is the answer. Love you all. Have a good night.